Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Since the siege and the assault was ceased at Troy, the walls breached and burnt down to brands and ashes, the knight that had knotted the nets of deceit was impeached for his perfidy, proven most true. It was high-born Aeneas and his haughty race that since prevailed over provinces and proudly reigned over well nigh all the wealth of the West Isles. Great Romulus to Rome repairs in haste, with boast and with bravery builds he that city, and names it with his own name that it now bears. Tisius to Tuscany, and towers raised. Langobard in Lombardy lays out homes, and far over the French sea, Felix Brutus on many broad hills and high Britain he sets most fair, where war and wrack and wonder by shifts have sojourned there, and bliss by turns with blunder, in that land's lot had share. And since this Britain was built by this baron great, bold boys bred there, and broils delighting, that did in their day many a deed most dire. More marvels have happened in this merry land than any other I know since that olden time. But of those that here built of British kings, King Arthur was counted most courteous of all. Wherefore an adventure I aim to unfold, that a marvel of might some men think it, and one unmatched among Arthur's wonders. If you will listen to my lay but a little while, as I heard it in hall, I shall hasten to tell anew, as it was fashioned featly, in tale of daring do, and linked in measures meetly, by letters tried and true. This king lay at Camelot at Christmastide. Many good knights and gay his guests were there, arrayed of the Round Table, rightful brothers, with feasting and fellowship and carefree mirth. There true men contented in tournaments many, joined there in jousting these gentle knights. Then came to the court for carol dancing, for the feast was in force full 15 days, with all the meat and the mirth that men could devise, such gaiety and glee, glorious to hear, brave den by day, dancing by night. High were their hearts in halls and chambers, these lords and these ladies, for life was sweet. In peerless pleasures passed they their days, the most noble knights known under Christ, and the loveliest ladies that lived on earth ever, and he the comeliest king that court holds. For all this fair folk in their first age were still happiest of mortal kind. King noblest famed of will, you would now go far to find so hardy a host on the hill. While the new year was new, but yesternight come, this fair folk at feast too full was served. When the king and his company were come in together, the chanting in chapel achieved and ended. Clerics and all the court acclaimed a glad season, cried Noel new, good news to men. Then gallants gathered gaily, hand gifts to make, called them out clearly, claimed them by hand, bickered long and busily about those gifts. Ladies laughed aloud, though losers they were, and he that won was not angered, as well you will know. All this mirth they made until meat was served. When they had washed them worthily, they went to their seats, the best seated above, as best it beseemed. Guinevere, the goodly queen, gay in the midst, on a dais well decked and duly arrayed, with costly silk curtains, a canopy over, of Toulouse and Turkestan tapestries rich, all broidered and bordered with the best gems ever brought into Britain, with bright pennies to pay. Fair queen, without a flaw, she glanced with eyes of grey, as seemlier that once he saw, in truth no man could say. But Arthur would not eat till all were served, so light was his lordly heart, and a little boyish. His life he liked lively, the less he cared to be lying for long, or long to sit. So busy his young blood, his brain so wild, and also a point of pride pricked him in heart, for he nobly had willed he would never eat on so high a holiday till he had heard first of some fair feat or fray, some far-borne tale, of some marvel of might that he might trust by champions of chivalry achieved in arms, or some suppliant came seeking some single knight to join with him in jousting, in jeopardy each to lay life for life, and leave it to fortune to afford him on field fair hap or other. Such is the king's custom, when his court he holds at each far famed feast amid his fair host so dear. The stout king stands in state till a wonder shall appear. He leads his heart elate, high mirth in the new year. So he stands there in state, the stout young king, talking before the high table of trifles fair. There, Gawain, the good knight by Guinevere sits, with Agravain a la Dure Main on her other side, both knights of renown and nephews of the king. Bishop Baldwin above begins the table, and Gawain, son of Urien, ate with him there. These few, the fair queen, were fittingly served. At the side tables sat many stalwart knights. Then the first course comes, with clamor of trumpets that were bravely bedecked with bannerets bright, with noise of new drums and the noble pipes. Wild were the warbles that wakened that day, in strains that stirred many strong men's hearts. There dainties were dealt out, dishes rare, choice fare to choose, on chargers so many, that scarce was there space to set before the people the service of silver, with sundry meats on cloth. Each fair guest freely there partakes, and nothing loth, 12 dishes before each pair, good beer and bright wine both. Of the service itself I need say no more, for well you will know no title was wanting, another noise and a new was well nigh at hand, that the Lord might have leave his life to nourish, for scarce were the sweet strain still in the hall. And the first course came to that company fair. There hurtles in at the hall door an unknown rider, one the greatest on ground in growth of his frame, from broad neck to buttocks so bulky and thick, and his loins and his legs so long and so great, half a giant on earth I hold him to be, but believe him no less than the largest of men, and that the seemliest in his stature to see as he rides, for in back and in breast, though his body was grim, his waist in its width was worthily small, and formed with every feature in fair accord was he. Great wonder grew in hall at his hue most strange to see, for man and gear and all were green as green could be, and in guise all of green, the gear and the man, a coat cut close that clung to his sides, and a mantle to match, made with a lining of furs cut and fitted. The fabric was noble, embellished all with ermine, and his hood beside, that was loosed from his locks and laid on his shoulders, with trim hose and tight, the same tint of green. His great calves were girt, and gold spurs under. He bore on silk bands that embellished his heels, and footgear well fashioned, for riding most fit, and all his vesture verily was verdant green, both the bosses on his belt and other bright gems that were richly ranged on his raiment noble, about himself and his saddle, set upon silk, that to tell half the trifles would tax my wits. The butterflies and birds embroidered thereon in green of the gayest, with many a gold thread, the pendants of the breastband, the princely crupper, and the bars of the bit were brightly enameled. stout stirrups were green that steadied his feet, and the bows of the saddle and the side panels both, that gleamed all and glinted with green gems about. The steed he bestrides, of that same green so bright, a green horse great and thick, a headstrong steed of might, embroidered bridle quick, mount matched man aright. Gay was this goodly man in guise all of green, and the hair of his head to his horse suited. Fair flowing tresses enfold his shoulders, a beard big as a bush on his breast hangs, that with his heavy hair, that from his head falls, was evened all about above both his elbows, that half his arm thereunder were hid in the fashion of a king's cappadoce that covers his throat, well maned of that mighty horse much to it like, well curled and becombed, and cunningly knotted with filaments of fine gold amid the fair green, here a strand of the hair, here one of gold, his tail and his foretop twin in their hue, and bound both with a band of bright green, that was decked adown the dock with dazzling stones, and tied tight at the top with a triple knot, where many bells well burnished rang bright and clear. Such a mount in his might, nor man on him riding, none had seen, I dare swear, with sight in that hall so grand, as lightning quick and light he looked to all at hand. It seemed that no man might his deadly dents withstand. Yet had he no helm, nor hauberk neither, nor plate, nor appurtenance appending to arms, nor shaft pointed sharp, nor shield for defence, but in his one hand he had a holly bob, that is goodliest in green when groves are bare, and an axe in his other, a huge and immense, a wicked piece of work, in words to expound. The head of it haft was an ell long, the spike of green steel resplendent with gold, the blade burnished bright with a broad edge, as well shaped to shear as a sharp razor. Stout was the stave in the strong man's grip, that was wound all with iron to the weapon's end, with engravings in green of goodliest work, a lace lightly about, that led to a knot, was looped in by lengths along the fair haft, and tassels thereto attached in a row, with buttons of bright green, brave to behold. This horseman hurtles in, and the hall enters, riding to the high dais, recked he no danger, not a greeting he gave us the guests he overlooked, nor wasted his words, but where is, he said, the captain of this crowd? Keenly I wish to see that sire with sight, and to himself say my say. He swaggered all about to scan the host so gay. He halted, as if in doubt, who in the hall held sway. There were stares on all sides as the stranger spoke, for much did they marvel what it might mean, that a horseman and a horse should have such a hue, grow green as the grass, and greener, it seemed, than green fused on gold, more glorious by far. All the onlookers eyed him, and edged nearer, and awaited in wonder what he would do, for many sights had they seen, but such a one never, so that phantom and fairy the folk there deemed it. Therefore chary of answer was many a champion bold, and stunned at his strong words, stone still they sat in a swooning silence in the stately hall, as all were slipped into sleep, so slackened their speech apace. Not all, I think, for dread, but some of courteous grace. Let him who was their head be spokesman in that place. Then Arthur before the high dais that entrance beholds, and hailed him as behooved, for he had no fear, and said, Fellow, in faith you have found fair welcome. The head of this whole street Arthur I am. Leap lightly down and linger, I pray, and the tale of your intent you shall tell us after. Nay, so help me, said the other. He that on high sits, to tarry here any time. 'Twas not my errand. But as the praise of you, prince, is puffed up so high, and your court and your company are counted the best, stoutest under steel gear on steeds to ride, worthiest of their works the wide world over, and peerless to prove in passages of arms, and courtesy here is carried to its height, and so at this season I have sought you out. You may be certain by the branch that I bear in hand that I pass here in peace, and would part friends, for I had come to this court on combat bent. I have a hauberk at home and a helm beside, a shield and a sharp spear shining bright, and other weapons to wield, I ween well to boot. But as I willed no war, I wore no metal. But if you be so bold as all men believe, you will graciously grant the game that I ask by right. Arthur answer gave, and said, Sir courteous knight, if contest bear you crave, you shall not fail to fight. Nay, to fight, in good faith, is far from my thought. There are about on these benches but beardless children. Were I here in full arms on a haughty steed, for measured against mine their might is puny, and so I call in this court for a Christmas game, for 'tis Yule and New Year, and many young bloods about. If any in this house such hardihood claims, be so bold in his blood, his brain so wild, as stoutly to strike one stroke for another, I shall give him, as my gift, this gazarme noble, this axe that is heavy enough to handle as he likes, and I shall bide the first blow, as bare as I sit. If there be one so wilful my words to essay, let him leap hither lightly, lay hold of this weapon. I quick claim it forever, keep it as his own, and I shall stand him a stroke steady on this floor, so you grant me the guerdon to give him another, sans blame. In a 12 month and a day he shall have of me the same. Now be it seen straightway, who dares take up the game. If he astonished them at first, stiller were then all that household and hall, the high and the low. The stranger on his green steed stirred in the saddle, and roisterously his red eyes he rolled all about, bent his bristling brows that were bright green, wagged his beard as he watched who would arise. When the court kept its counsel, he coughed aloud, and cleared his throat coolly, the clearer to speak. What is this Arthur's house? Said the horseman then, whose fame is so fair in far realms and wide. Where is now your arrogance and your awesome deeds, your valor and your victories and your vaunting words? Now are the revel and renown of the Round Table overwhelmed with the word of one man's speech, for all cower and quake, and no cut felt. With this he laughed so loud that the Lord grieved. The blood for sheer shame shot to his face, and pride. With rage his face flushed red, and so did all beside. Then the king, as bold man bred, toward the stranger took a stride, and said, Sir, now we see you will say but folly, which whoso has sought, it suits that he find. No guest here is aghast of your great words. Give to me your gizarme, in God's own name, and the boon you have begged shall straight be granted. He leaps to him lightly, lays hold of his weapon. The green fellow on foot fiercely alights. Now has Arthur his axe, and the half grips, and sternly stirs it about, on striking bent. The stranger before him stood there erect, higher than any in the house by a head and more. With stern look as he stood, he stroked his beard, and his undaunted countenance drew down his coat. No more moved nor dismayed were his mighty dents than any bold man on bench had brought him a drink of wine. Gawain by Guinevere toward the king doth now incline. I beseech before all here that this melee may be mine. Would you grant me the grace, said Gawain to the king, to be gone from this bench and stand by you there, if I without discourtesy might quit this board, and if my liege lady disliked it not, I would come to your counsel before your court noble, for I find it not fit, as in faith it is known, when such a boon is begged before all these knights, that you be tempted thereto to take it on yourself, while so bold men about benches sit, that no host under heaven is hardier of will, nor better brothers arms where battle is joined. I am the weakest, well I know, and of wit feeblest, and the loss of my life will be least of any. That I have you for uncle is my only praise. My body, but for your blood, is barren of worth, and for that this folly befits not a king, and 'tis I that have asked it. It ought to be mine. And if my claim be not comely, let all this court judge in sight. The court essays the claim, and in council all unite to give Gawain the game, and release the king outright. Then the king called the knight to come to his side. He rose up readily and reached him with speed, bows low to his lord, lays hold of the weapon. He releases it lightly and lifts up his hand, and gives him God's blessing. Graciously prays that his heart and his hand may be hearty both. Keep, cousin, said the king, what you cut with this day, and if you rule it aright, then readily I know you shall stand the stroke it will strike after. Gawain goes to the guest with gisarme in hand, and boldly he bides there, abashed not a whit. Then hails he Sir Gawain, the horseman in green. Recount we our contract before you come further. First I ask and adjure you how you are called, that you tell me true, so that trust it I may. In good faith, said the good knight, Gawain am I, whose buffet befalls you, whatever betide after, and at this time 12th month take from you another, with what weapon you will, and with no man else alive. The other nods assent. Sir Gawain, as I may thrive, I am wondrous well content that you this dent shall drive. Sir Gawain, said the Green Knight, by God I rejoice that your fish shall fetch this favor I seek, and you have readily rehearsed, and in right terms, each clause of my covenant with the king your lord, save that you shall assure me, sir, upon oath, that you shall seek me yourself, wheresoever you deem my lodgings may lie, and look for such wages as you have offered me here before all this host. What is the way there? Said Gawain. Where do you dwell? I heard never of your house by him that made me, nor I know you not, knight, your name, nor your court. But tell me truly thereof, and teach me your name, and I shall fare forth to find you so far as I may. And this I say in good certain, and swear upon oath. That is enough. In New Year you need say no more, said the knight in the green to Gawain the noble. If I tell you true, when I have taken your knock, and if you handily have hit, you shall hear straightway of my house and my home and my own name. Then follow in my footsteps by faithful accord, and if I spend no speech, you shall speed the better. You can feast with your friends, nor further trace my tracks. Now hold your grim tool steady, and show us how it hacks. Gladly, sir, all ready, says Gawain. He strokes the axe. The Green Knight upon ground girds him with care, bows a bit with his head, and bares his flesh. His long lovely locks he laid over his crown, let the naked nape for the knee be shown. Gawain grips to his axe and gathers it aloft. The left foot on the floor before him he set, brought it down deftly upon the bare neck, that the shock of the sharp blow shivered the bones and cut the flesh cleanly and clove it in twain, that the blade of the bright steel bit into the ground. The head was hewn off and fell to the floor. Many found it at their feet as forth it rolled. The blood gushed from the body bright on the green, yet fell not the fellow, nor faltered a whit, but stoutly he starts forth upon stiff shanks, and as all stood staring, he stretched forth his hand, laid hold of his head, and heaved it aloft, then goes to the green steed, grasps the bridle, steps into the stirrup, bestrides his mount, and his head by the hair in his hand holds, and as steady he sits in the stately saddle, as he had met with no mishap, nor missing were his head. His bulk about he haled, that fearsome body that bled. There were many in the court that quailed before all his say was said. For the head in his hand he holds right up toward the first on the dais directs he the face, and it lifted up its lids, and looked with wide eyes, and said as much with its mouth as now you may hear. Sir Gawain, forget not to go as agreed, and cease not to seek till me, sir, you find. And you promised in the presence of these proud knights to the green chapel come. I charge you to take such a dent as you have dealt. You have well deserved that your neck should have a knock on New Year's morn. The night of the green chapel I am well known to many, wherefore you cannot fail to find me at last. Therefore come or be counted a recreant knight. With a roisterous rush he flings round the reins, hurtles out the hall door, his head in his hand, that the flint fire flew from the flashing hoofs. Which way he went, not one of them knew, nor whence he was come in the wide world so fair. The king and Gawain gay make game of the green knight there, yet all who saw it say 'twas a wonder past compare. Though high-born author at heart had wonder, he let no sign be seen, but said aloud to the comely queen with courteous speech, Dear dame, on this day dismay you no whit, such crafts are becoming at Christmastide. Laughing at interludes, light songs and mirth, amid dancing of damsels with doughty knights, nevertheless of my meat now let me partake, for I have met with a marvel I may not deny. He glanced at Sir Gawain, and gaily he said, Now, sir, hang up your axe, that has hewn enough. And over the high dais it was hung on the wall, that men in amazement might on it look, and tell in true terms the tale of the wonder. Then they turned toward the table, these two together, the good king and Gawain, and made great feast, with all dainties double, dishes rare, with all manner of meat, and minstrelsy both. Such happiness wholly had they that day in hold. Now take care, Sir Gawain, that your courage wax not cold, when you must turn again to your enterprise foretold.